What's up guys? Today I'll be replacing ball joints and control arm bushings in my 2006 Chevy Trailblazer. Now to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is jack up the Blazer and remove the front wheels. Now in my case, I'm running a set of wheel spacers, so they're going to have to be removed before we can start tearing everything else down. Now they've been on here a while and they got a little bit of corrosion on them, being that they're made of aluminum. So I'm going to give them a generous coating of WD-40 before taking the impact gun to them. After I've got those removed, I'm going to start tearing everything down by loosening the castle nut on my tie rod end using a 13/16 socket. Now once I get that loosened up, I'm going to give the knuckle a few taps with a ball peen hammer just to knock the tie rod end loose. Then I'm going to use my floor jack to lift up on the lower control arm to take tension off the upper so I can get the bolt out that holds the upper control arm to the upper ball joint. Next, I'm going to be removing the brake caliper and mount. You're going to also want to remove the two 10mm bolts that hold the brake line to the knuckle. After that, I'm going to loosen the nut on the lower ball joint, then give the knuckle a few taps with my ball peen hammer to free up the ball joint. With the knuckle removed, I can now focus on disconnecting the lower strut mount. Now it's time to disconnect the sway bar links. Mine are seized up, so I just broke it with a hammer and I'll cut them off before I replace them with the new longer ones when I go to reassemble everything. Now the next step is to remove the bolts holding the lower control arm to the mount. Once that's removed, we're going to take out the 3 bolts that go through the frame and hold the lower control arm mount inside the frame. Now once we remove these 3 bolts, we're going to take a pry bar and just pry out against that mount, and it should slide out without too much trouble. As a side note here, you're going to want to mark the position of the lower control arm mount before you remove it, because when you go to put the new one in, you're going to want to get it as close to original as you can. There's a lot of adjustment in these mounts, so you want to get the new mount as close as possible to the same position as the one you're taking out. Once you got the lower mount positioned where you want it at, you can go ahead and reinstall those 3 bolts and torque them down to spec. Now, removing the upper control arms can be tricky. On the passenger side, I had to take out my air box and my wiper reservoir tank so I could get to the front bolt. As far as the back bolt, I just use a 1/2" drive ratchet with about a 3" extension and a socket, and I just took my time working it out. Now, when I go put everything back together, I'm going to take the new upper control arm for the passenger side, flip it upside down, and put it on the driver's side, and then vice versa. The driver's side will get flipped and put on the passenger. And what this does is corrects the angle of the ball joints. Now, the ball joints are at an extremely pinched angle when you got a lift on it, and the arms are not flipped. Now that we got the upper control arms back in, snug down, we can start putting everything back together in the same order that we took it off. Make sure to torque everything down to spec as you're reassembling it. Now this next part is something that I do to get my alignment kind of back into the ballpark of where it needs to be for me to be able to drive it to town to get a proper alignment done. I use 2 pieces of angle steel bolted to my rotors and take measurements from the front and back side of the rotor, ensuring that I can get them as close to even as possible. Now with that all back together and everything torqued down to spec, I'm ready to take this thing for a test drive and then make any adjustments that I need to. As with any suspension work, you're going to want to get an alignment afterwards. That way a shop can look over and make sure everything falls within spec of where it needs to be at, so you have the best ride quality as possible. All right, guys, so that's how you replace ball joints and control arm bushings in the 02 to 09 Trailblazers. I hope this video was able to help you out. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave it a like. You can comment and subscribe. You can also follow along with my projects on Facebook and Instagram at GC Off-Road.